What's up, guys? I go by the name Fitness Trainer Joey on YouTube. I wanted to start up a channel, and I wanted my first videos to be just simple explanations on how to run faster as soccer players and as athletes. But for those of you who've been living under a rock for the past day or so, I just couldn't be silent. The U.S. went from being a guaranteed qualifier for the World Cup to not even being in the playoffs, the playoff games to get into the World Cup within the matter of one game against the literal worst team in the group, who have not won any of their qualifying games in the hexagon. And now everyone's kind of looking back and trying to figure out, where everything went wrong, and everyone just kind of puts it on one thing, and frankly, it's not. It's a whole list of everything that's been going wrong. Frankly, since I'd want to say the 2010 World Cup, maybe around there. But I'm going to try and delve a little bit into it so that you guys can understand what has actually happened. Is there's a lot of talking heads who, frankly, if you're unaware of anything beyond just what you see on TV, you'll not fully understand the ramifications of it. So, as for me, I wanted to build up this channel just to kind of keep myself around and in the game as coaching while I come back. I get a degree. And I also work on the side to make some money. I myself have played around the world at a professional and semi-professional level. Played in South America, played in Mexico, played in England, Denmark, and Germany. So I have a little bit of an idea of how things work. Not to the expertise level that one day I hope to achieve, but high enough that I have an understanding of what's going on and why these people who get paid to talk about it simply are there for hot takes instead of actually going through everything. So first things first, we got to go over the coaching staff. That's usually where a lot of people put the blame on the coaching staff, on the coaching situation. So you can't blame Arena, because everyone knows what Arena is, all right? He's got the same tactics that you saw in the 1990s from high school coaches, and that's what he's always been, and that's what he will always be. He stumbled into a 2002 perfect storm of taking on a Portugal team that had yet to catch fire. This is a Portugal team that didn't even have Cristiano Ronaldo yet. They had one really good player, and the rest of them were average, and we managed to get out of that group. And then in the round of 16, we played Mexico before coming into Germany, who were about 2 years away from hitting their low and having a full-on crisis and meeting from that point in the Euro of 2004. So he had a perfect storm. He had a developing player in Landon Donovan. He had a few other players who were kind of at the top of their game, and they played the style that Arena loves to play, of just this kind of knock it long, be a lot bigger and more physical than them. And alongside that, he had a low expectations for everything. The 1998 World Cup was a disaster. France 98, I don't think the U.S. even won a game. The 94 World Cup, we got out of the group. It was a nice little thing, and then 98, it started to happen. And then 2002, we tried to take it a little more seriously, but we had these, we didn't have expectations of making the World Cup and doing something in it, and he managed to do something like that. So everyone's got a rosy-eyed view of Arena because of that, and people seem to just give him a pass from the 2006 World Cup, where he went to Germany and got 1 point in a group that we should have at least competed in. I mean, the one game we got a point out of, it was because Italy scored an own goal. We had nothing on Italy. We had nothing on Ghana. Ghana ran over us, and the only reason we were somewhat close is because Clint Dempsey was emerging as a star at the time. And then we also had the Czech Republic, who absolutely dismantled us. Thomas Rosicky just put his stamp on that game and cemented himself as a really solid player in the midfield and just absolutely ate us up. And we never learned our lesson from that. We never learned how to develop players from that, because our next coach was Bob Bradley, who played an even more defensive style. I mean, Bradley's tactics made him one of the quickest managers or like one of the shortest managers in the English Premier League, trying to save Swansea, and Swansea didn't even like his tactics. So, you know, you can't blame Arena. He's exactly what he expected. And frankly, you know, whoever hired Arena, whoever got rid of Klinnsman to hire Arena, should be the one that blame, and that goes to Gulati. He's the one who set it up. Klinnsman understood our problems, and that's something that we don't want to admit. We don't want to admit that we had a serious problem, and 2018 World Cup was not what we should be looking to achieve. We should be looking back and saying, all right, we're about to hit a really low point and we need to move on, because, you know, we don't have talent coming through. Pulisic is like a blessing but a curse at the same time. He is a blessing because he is an amazing talent. You can't buy the hype that he's going to be the next Messi, all right? He's not at that level, but he is going to be one of those very big talents that is talked about in Europe, who's going to be on the transfer list, and like always in the transfer rumors every time around the January transfer window. There's going to be a team making a push for a title or trying to make a push in the Champions League, and if he is developed right, Pulisic's name will always be in there, and that is what the kind of player he's going to be. And that is miles better than anything we've ever had. All right, Dempsey. You know, Donovan was not that player, all right? Donovan was a fast player, scored some PKs, and he's absolutely loved because he's got some few moments. But Dempsey has been that player up until this point. He has been the guy who has been in Europe. He's gotten a few transfers here and there. He kept Fulham up. He was a superstar at Fulham, and that was about mid-level English Premier League talent. He went up to Tottenham as they were trying to advance a little higher. Maybe if he had stuck it out for a couple more years, or if he had transferred earlier, he could have been a little bit bigger of a star in Europe. But he had family reasons. He wanted to come back to the U.S. He also transferred a little bit later into Tottenham, so trying to break into that team that was also bringing up the youngsters that you see right now. That wasn't going to happen as much. So he came back, you know. Yeah, it sucks. I'd love to have him still competing in Europe so that way he could have been something and then coming back a couple years later. But I understand. He wants to have his kids raised in the U.S. He doesn't want to have them raised in England. And you can't fault a family man for that. And he's given and developed way more than anyone else in the U.S. You know, everyone looks at Bradley, and Bradley is the one that I would kick Bradley. I would put a lot of Bradley's failed career and failed expectations from the U.S. on Bradley as well. He was in a great situation, all right? He had a few hits and misses. I think it was either Aston Villa or Hull City. He went on loan. He didn't do much there. He played in Germany, Mönchengladbach, I want to say, but I'm not fairly certain. I'm not looking at it right now. Then he went into, I think it was Chievo, maybe Chievo Verona, somewhere like mid-table Serie A, and he did well, and he did very well. And then he went to Roma, and he spent about 6 months there, and he had to actually compete for playing spot. So there was 3 defensive midfielders in there. Bradley was one. There was another one, Strootman, and then I think the final one was Daniel De Rossi. So they played like a 2 defensive midfielders. So Bradley was the 3rd one coming in, and what a shock. He has to compete for his spot against top talent. The perfect spot for the make or break and develop yourself as a player. And not only that, he transfers back, he gets paid in Toronto, and he gives up any challenge of that. And then like a month or 2 later, Strootman's down for like a year with an injury. So now there's that second spot that Bradley gets to go in, and he doesn't even have to compete that hard for that spot. And he can play alongside an Italian legend of Daniel De Rossi in that defensive mid spot. and actually become a great talent. But instead, he's in Toronto looking at a Juventus reject in Giovanni. Good Lord, I'm Giovinco. Sorry, Giovinco, and Giovinco is tearing up MLS, but people don't realize he was rejected at Juventus. Juventus had him, developed him. They got rid of him. They sold him. He did well in like a mid-table Serie A team. They bought him back, and he still didn't do much, so they sold him to Toronto. That's Giovinco, and he's tearing up MLS. And you got two U.S. stars sitting next to him in Bradley and Josie Altidore, and Giovinco's the star in there. And then we're shocked that the U.S. isn't on top of the world. The Italian national team coach came and watched him and said later on he's not competing at an international level. I can't call him up. Yeah, he's the best player in MLS, but I can't call him up to the national team because he's not at a standard for international play. And then we're bringing up like 75% of our players from the MLS, and we're shocked that we can't compete on an international level, and we're ripping this Italian coach. The Italians have a much higher standard for their play. They have a much higher base for how they have a much higher expectations for their national team. You know, when they lose in PKs to Germany in the Euro quarterfinals, it's not like, oh, shucks, it's like a good attempt. We lost out to a great team and we got to bounce back next time. No, there's legitimate criticism that's laid at the feet of the coach and the players, and they are questioned, and everything about it is questioned to almost to the point of like the British media that like breaks down players with every single criticism of every single day. And so a coach that comes out and says it because he knows he's going to have criticism of every single level. And it's not that the MLS is looked down upon as like a retirement league, because like right now I feel like they have mostly gotten rid of the shackles of that. You know, the Schweinsteiger signing doesn't help with that. Pirlo and Villa at NYCFC. The lucky thing is Villa still kind of goes back and forth into Spain for their national team occasionally and still does okay. So he is still kind of recognized at that level. And we still have the MLS All-Star game that comes in, and we play an international team and we do well against them. And then you have like a couple of these international friendlies where, you know, the MLS coaches aren't putting their best lineup out there, and these European teams are not fully in shape, but you still see like the huge gap. But MLS is definitely getting above there, but we don't have those players. And the other thing is, look at the past Olympics, the 2016 and the 2012 Olympics. We're not even qualifying for them. These are supposed to be our players that are coming up. And yes, the Taylor Twellmen rant had legitimate criticisms in there. As much as I'd hate to give Taylor Twellmen credit, because even in his rant, he's still wrong about a few things, but he had legitimate criticisms, and he found a legitimate flaw in the fact that we don't have these, we aren't even competing in the Olympics. The Olympic qualifying. We send like 2-3 teams to the Olympics for men's soccer. It's under 23 players. We don't send those anywhere. Where are our under 23 players? And you know, that is a serious criticism, because the 2012 and the 2016 players should be playing for our national team, where they're not good enough to even make our national team. And you know, part of it is the talent's not there, and part of it is Bruce Arena decides, you know, I'm not going to try and call up some 24 to 28 year old left back. I'd rather take, you know, someone from the 1400s and DeMarcus Beasley and see if he still like can compete at an international level. But part of it is we just don't have that talent there. I mean, yes, there's a few players that were playing in Mexico. I remember from the 2012 World Cup or Olympic qualifiers, there were a couple players playing in Mexico. There was a player playing in Portugal. There were a couple players on reserve squads in Europe coming in, and then we had some young talent in the MLS, but they didn't amount to anything. There was nothing in there. And you know, we're banking off of some of these guys. You know, we're banking off of some of our failed like wonder stars, which really scares me about Pulisic. And I hope Don Garber has a little bit of sense in him in wanting to develop the U.S. as a national team and doesn't try and buy Pulisic and bring him to the MLS. Because we've had Altidore is one of our guys who was supposed to be amazing. We had Agudelo, who was supposed to be amazing. We had Brek Shea. We had Freddie Adu. They all came in. They all played in the MLS. They were all overhyped. They all went overseas. They did decently in Holland and never went anywhere else and did anything. Brek Shea was decent in Holland. He was playing in the championship and he didn't push himself anywhere and he came back. Freddie Adu became a journeyman who just didn't end up anywhere, and now he can't even compete at an MLS level anymore. Agudelo went to Holland and then just disappeared and then came back all of a sudden and then starting to try and play in MLS. Josie Altidore was okay in Holland, but then he kept trying to make a jump from the Holland to the Premier League and could never do it, and instead of recognizing that, hey, maybe I should try a different league that doesn't fit, that doesn't do that, and see if I can do that. No, he just decides to come back to MLS. So we're stuck at this poor talent level that goes into Europe, faces a challenge, and decides, no, I don't want to do it. I'm going to come back and get paid big bucks in the MLS. And then we wonder why, we can't beat Trinidad and Tobago. It's ridiculous. We had Panama, Honduras, Trinidad and Tobago. We should be competing. We should be beating Costa Rica. We should be competing and beating Mexico. We should be at least trading games, a win and a loss here, like a win and a loss, home and away. That being said, there's Honduras, there's Panama, and there's Trinidad and Tobago. Those are teams we should be beating at home, beating away, and perhaps getting a tie out of one of those three games. That's realistically, that should be what we are doing. And we can't do that. We've proven that we can't do that because we took fifth. We took fifth. We beat Panama at home. Yeah, we should have beaten Panama at home. We should dominate Panama at home because it's a little bit of a beneficial to us. But when we go to Trinidad and Tobago and play on this, they're complaining about the field being wet and heavy. Trinidad had to play on there. Did you see the 2 goals? First one's an own goal from Omar Gonzalez. Do we not have Matt Miazga? Why isn't he playing in there? He's a young and up-and-coming. He's a developed player who went to Chelsea. Recognized that he's a developing talent. They bought him up. They're loaning him out to Holland to try and develop himself a little bit more in the European style. They got him out of the MLS. Why are we not putting him in this huge situation? All right. Maybe we qualify for the World Cup, maybe we don't, but he gets valuable experience at the men's national team. But no, we got to throw Omar Gonzalez on there, who we haven't accepted the fact that he's not an international defender. He was an above average defender in MLS, so that somehow makes him an amazing international player? Are you kidding? No wonder that happened. And we can't, and then we've got Tim Howard in goal. Yeah, he had an amazing World Cup 2014. He had those 14 saves. I've talked to a couple keeper friends. They said, yeah, it's okay. And you look at some of those saves, and his defenders just kind of bent but didn't break and relied on him to make those saves. Okay, whatever you think about that, he's old. Where's our next keepers? Where are our next keepers? Why aren't they in there? Why isn't Guzan from Aston Villa taking over, or Middlesbrough now? Why isn't he taking over? Why isn't he in that spot? Why is Bruce Arena going back to fucking Tim Howard, requiring him to save it? All right, Howard's at that point where he's back in the MLS, he's back living in the U.S., and he's gonna just live out his declining years as a goalkeeper in the U.S. He should be a backup keeper. He should be playing what Nick Raimondo played on that role. All right. Where are these MLS keepers that are supposedly going to be taking over? You have Sean Johnson and Bill Hamid. They're still in the MLS. Why haven't they gone somewhere? Why haven't they transformed themselves? We have a keeper playing in the Nordic countries. Why isn't he coming into these? Why isn't he even in these conversations? I mean, there's still some talent out there, but it's not being developed. And the thing that I hate is okay, Klinnsman's not the best coach in the world. Germany understood that. Bayern Munich understood that. He's not at that extremely high level. But Klinnsman took over in 2004. All right? Everyone talks about how Germany, had a 10-year plan after the terrible Euros, and they were going to, in 10 years, win the World Cup. Klinnsman was the first guy on that. He was the one who took them from 2004 to 2006 and started that process. All right? Maybe he has an idea of how to start this process. And you know what? after the 2014 World Cup. He looked at this roster and thought, okay, it's really old. We're going to have to do what Germany did in 2004 and restructure everything. And that's what he was starting to do. The results didn't show up great in the World Cup qualifying. And so instead of, telling the bad news, telling us what we don't want to hear, in that we're not good enough to qualify for this World Cup, we shouldn't be qualifying for this World Cup, we need to be bringing up the next group of players so that 2022 comes around and not only are we qualifying, but we're a legitimate contender for like quarterfinals, maybe semifinals. We're what Belgium was in 2014. We're at that level where we're a dark horse to do well. But no, we fire him, we bring back a dinosaur who's supposed to help at least just guide us into the World Cup and make us hit the 2018 and just patch holes, fixing a dam with duct tape. And what we sold our soul to make the 2018 World Cup, and we didn't do that. Now what? Gulati's got to go. Garber's role has to be shut down immensely. He should not have any say in the U.S. men's national team. He should have someone above him telling him, this is what the MLS needs to be developing. This is what needs to happen. He should be in there with the USL and the NASL and telling him, this is what needs to happen for our development. There needs to be something along those lines. Gulati's got to go. Arena's got to go. There's got to be a whole change in mentality here. Garber's was the one who was constantly ripping on Klinnsman because Klinnsman was pointing out the MLS isn't good enough to compete on an international level, and Garber's got this giant ego and pushing Gulati to fire him. The MLS isn't good enough to compete on an international level. They can't even knock off Mexican teams who don't take the CONCACAF Champions League or whatever that version of it is seriously. The Mexican teams don't take that seriously. They play in the Copa Libertadores at the same time as the knockout stages for at the same stages as this CONCACAF Champions League. So they don't take this seriously. It's just like the third best trophy you could win, because it's the Mexican leagues, and then it's the Libertadores, and then there's this. So like if there's a coach who's like job is about to be fired, he concentrates on the Mexican leagues, and then maybe he's the one at the end winning it. We haven't competed in that. We've had like one MLS team make the finals, unless there was another team outside of the Impact that's made it in the past couple of years. I don't know of any. So like, how are we even trying to convince ourselves that we can compete at an international level? We're not even playing against European teams when they're trying to win something. They come here as like a warm-up game. This is like, this is like a preseason friendly. This is like when Alabama goes and plays some community college that's not like just in like suit up with pads and beats the ever-living snot out of them. That's what European teams do to our MLS teams. Get an MLS team in the FIFA Club World Cup. Have them compete against a South American team. Have them compete against a European team. Have them compete against an African team or an Asian team with a club team that's trying to win it, and see how far behind we actually are. Oh my God, it'll be mind-blowing to see that an MLS team go up against, Real Madrid, see them go up against FC Barcelona, see them go up against Bayern Munich, PSG, whoever wins the Champions League. See them go up again and play against one of those teams and watch them just absolutely smack the shit out of MLS, and maybe then we'll understand that, hey, we're not at that level, but we don't even get to that chance, so we can just convince ourselves that MLS is a top 20 league in the world. So what? We're a top 20 league in the world. What are the best leagues right now out there? All right, you got the English Premier League. We're not better than them. There's La Liga. There's the French League. There's the German League. There's the Italian League. There's the Dutch League. What else is there after that? I mean, there's the Portuguese League. That's 7. You got Brazil, you got Argentina, you got Mexico. Okay, there's 10. There's 10, and I've listed off like almost all of them. So there's another 10 in there that we apparently belong into. So what? That's not a huge accomplishment. Outside of like those 10 leagues, not a lot of players will compete at an international level. I mean, you'll have teams from Colombia that, play in the Colombian leagues, Ecuador, Chile. Yeah, they're good teams, and they're constantly competing against Argentina, Brazil, competing in South America that have the top of the line. Uruguay doesn't have many players in Uruguay playing. They're playing in Argentina, Brazil, or in Europe, but they're still they're constantly competing against insane teams. So even if they're playing in a lower league in South America, they're playing internationally against these top players. So they're developed at that level. We don't have that. All right. That's the top part. But then, the other part of this is the youth development. And this is where I think Taylor Twellmen gets it a little bit wrong. He wants to get rid of the pay for play. You're not going to get rid of the pay for play. The problem with with trying to compare ourselves with every other country that, doesn't require pay for play is look at the size of the U.S. Look at the map, look at a map of the U.S. and then look at a map of Argentina. Look at a map of England. Look at a map of Germany. Look at how far they have to travel to play every top talent in their country. Look at it Europe in general. They just play in themselves, and then they're very, very, very top tiers, which are also funded, by the way, by clubs that make more than the entire MLS and have an actual reason to develop players financially. When they have to go in, when they play and they want to develop themselves and test themselves over Europe's best, they travel, and that would be the same as the U.S. Here in the U.S., we have a few good teams in states, and then they have to travel what would be the distance of an entire country and then another half a country to go play another decent team. So you're never going to get rid of that pay to play because, frankly, the cost of travel alone is too much. And then, we've still got some free stuff with the MLS academies. If you're the best there, you can go play at that. But we're not going to get rid of that pay for play. And frankly, I don't think that's the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem we have is you go from U11 to U18, and we're not far off. We're not, the best at the U18, the U17, the U16 level, but we're not anywhere near the crisis we are at the US men's national team level. The problem is once they hit that U18 stage up to 23, they're just thrown to the wolves, and we hope something comes out of them. There's hardly any development. The development we have is, well, college works for other sports, so you got to work for soccer too, right? And then, they come out and it's nothing. There's nothing there. I mean, you maybe get one play, the blind squirrel finds a nut eventually. That's what happens. I mean, if you look at others, any other country, they from U18 to U23 is where they completely change all their play. Their talent develops into that international stage right around there, unless they have that once in a generation player. But usually that's right where it develops in there. And why is that? Because they go from their academy into a professional environment and training with professionals, and they're playing against top level professionals. In Germany, the way it works is you get up through your youth team up to U19, and then you have a U23 team. So they develop you the same way that we develop every other player, going from U13, U14, U15, U16, playing against each other, playing at the top level. But then once you get to that U23 stage, you're put in, there's no U23 league. You get put as a second team into the professional ranks in Germany. So a team like Dortmund or a team like Bayern Munich, their U23 team is playing in the 4th division in Germany. That's still a professional league. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st are the professional leagues in Germany, and their second teams from U19 to U23 are professional leagues. So they're going and they're playing against guys who are getting paid pretty well to beat them. And as a U19 to U23, they have to develop and they have to up their game to play and compete at that level. But not only do they have that, as the U23 and the second team, they'll get these players that will come down. A player gets injured. Vidal gets injured. Thomas Mueller gets injured. Lewandowski gets injured. They got Hummels at Bayern. One of those guys gets injured and they're coming back and they're training back. They'll go to that second team and they'll be put in there, and all the U23 players can see this is an international player. This is what he trains at. This is what you see here. And then some of those U23 players who shine and do well get brought up into their professional the professional team and see that level and see what the next step is and see how they have to improve their game. They see the speed of play. They see the control. They see the quality. They see what they have to, how far ahead people see. They see the speed of play. We don't have that in the U.S. We're starting to develop it. It just came up with the academies and MLS players trying to bring them in. But we have this entire college system where it's just like, all right, from U18 to U23, you go and play in college, and college is a completely different system. It's the college system. Every college coach has the same problem, so you can't really blame a lot of college coaches. But the way they look at it is, I have about 4 months of a team, and then to get a team ready and compete against a bunch of other colleges, then I'm going to have 8 months of recruitment, and then the next year for these next 4 or 5 months, I have a 75%, a 50 to a 75% changeover in a roster. I can't run a system in this. I can't have passes. I can't have people playing. I can't have people understanding and reading each other and moving at the next pace. And not only that, the substitutions are insane. You get unlimited substitutions so long as you have players on your bench. So a player can come off in the first half and then he can be put back on in the second half. And then if a player comes off in the second half, he can be brought back in the second half and then come out. How does someone benefit from that over a 90-minute game that the rest of the world plays? I can put someone out there who sprints like crazy for 15 minutes, has zero control over the ball, and is just constantly just hit it long and have him run after it. All right, now he's tired. Instead of, okay, he's tired, I'm gonna be short a man, and now I'm gonna be playing 11v10. No, I'm just gonna sub him off and bring another guy in and have him sprint for 15 minutes and then sub him off and put a third guy in there. That's not how the game is played. You don't just have someone sprinting constantly for 15 minutes. It's a 90-minute game. There's control, there's tactics involved, there's touch. You don't have that at the college level. Some of the best players that shine at the college level are physical animal, like beasts, but they go to the MLS and you get, how many players? Look at how many players from the first 2 rounds of the MLS draft make it. Look at the 4 rounds. I mean, these MLS teams barely care about their draft picks. Some of them don't even make draft picks because they see what the college is producing. And that's the majority of our entire, landscape of players. Players come through and they go through all through this pay to play, and their goal is to play in college. Okay, there's an entire player who could have potentially, had an entire system set up, and his goal could have been, I want to play professionally and see if that works. And instead his goal is to play in college. He gets to college, he plays for a year or 2, and then the next 2 years he's either not playing or he's not caring as much. And there's an entire wasted talent that could potentially be helping us internationally. It's just absolutely mind-boggling how that system still functions and still works. And then, the other thing that I couldn't actually fathom as to why it is you've got, you've got the Development Academy system. When that came around, I was at a U16. I remember I was around for ODP when it was still the biggest thing, and ODP was the way you got identified for the national team, and you also had the Super Y Leagues that would help you get identified, and they brought in the Development Academy, and the whole thing was, we're going to identify these players who don't want to do ODP and don't want to do Super Y. We feel like we're missing a bunch of players. So they took a bunch of this and they fully concentrated on Development Academy and just threw ODP and threw Super Y to the side. Well, the entire Development Academy League was, we're just going to have a select group of clubs. We're going to have all the best players go to these clubs, and we're going to make it very inclusive, or we're not going to make it very inclusive for clubs to get into our Development Academy, and you have to maintain a certain level or you're going to be out. And then they're going to all compete, and we're just going to look at them. So now you've gotten even a smaller pool. Why didn't you keep ODP? Why didn't you keep Super Y and have them be a thing? So you have these development academies that have all these high players in there, and you're looking at them. And then you have the ODPs and the Super Ys. So, okay, maybe there's that gives you a bigger net to catch these players. So, the amount of players before with ODP and Super Y that were falling through the net were pretty big. But if you add a third thing in the Development Academy, wouldn't that widen the net and have less players falling through? But they didn't do that, and now you've got a lot of players just falling through. I'm from Wisconsin. We had one team in the Development Academy, and now they're not even in there. So now the entire state of Wisconsin, if they want to get identified for the national team, but from the Development Academy, they have to be willing to drive 2-3 hours to Chicago every day for training, or they have to be living on the border in La Crosse to drive over to Minneapolis to play for the Minnesota United or Minnesota Thunder, whoever has that Development Academy, or they have to go and live in Shattuck St. Mary's. You're leaving an entire state out. There might be one player who can maybe play at an international level or help compete at that international level, but it's not even there. I can't remember his name, but there was a guy I saw, and he was about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, because I remember he was a big deal because he was one of the guys who helped coach two of the Japanese players. One was Shinji Kagawa when he was coming on at Dortmund right before he went to Manchester United. It might have been right when he went to Manchester United. But he went to Japan, and his whole deal was you got to train the very bottom of the ladder. And his philosophy was you get the bottom of the ladder better, and then those bottom players, as they get better, push everyone else above them to get better. So if you have all of these players and you're identifying them and you're bringing them into the national team level, maybe they're not the ones who are going to be playing on the men's national team or the under 23s, the under 19s, 18s, 17s, whatever. But you've identified them and you're training them up, and you have this other option, so the players who actually need to get there or want to be there have to compete at a higher level, and they have to step their game up. They have to get better, and then they push themselves up. And as a country as a whole, you push your talent up. But we don't have that. It's one of the biggest markets for finding talent. I mean, you look at California, Texas, Florida, Illinois, New York. There are huge clubs from Europe who are have a sponsor in some of these places because they know the U.S. has talent in there, and they want to identify that talent and pick them up. I mean, there's 2 or 3 players from California who are in Real Madrid and FC Barcelona's youth academy, but they're 11, 12 years old, but they're starting to look there. If these places can identify that, why is the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. Soccer Federation, whose whole goal is to develop and find these players, why aren't they doing that? Why can't they find this stuff out? I mean, that's what Klinnsman was trying to do for the most part. He looked at it and said, okay, for right now, we don't have anything. We need to start developing it. And he's laying these harsh criticisms on the U.S. development. And a bunch of people don't like that. We don't have that. So why aren't you getting anything like that? And it's simply not happening. All right. So to kind of close it off, I'm going to talk about, why South America works the way it does and why it's not going to be here, and, why we should be looking more towards Europe. So with South America, you've got a lot of these, poor kids who come up and realize that their only way out of poverty is probably going to be through soccer. So they're playing for their livelihoods. They're playing because if they don't make it, they're going back to the streets. So that's never going to be the U.S. All right, barring a Venezuelan crash, we're not going to be at that level. So we're never going to be at that level. And the other thing about it too is, a lot of these clubs, when you look at South America, a lot of these big clubs have a lot of smaller clubs as well, and they're all just compact together in neighborhoods. Buenos Aires is huge, and it has an insane number of clubs. But then you have Rosario to the north, who's, it's nowhere near as big, but it still is the same thing, and it has a lot of clubs around it. So a lot of these poor kids can just hop on a bus and go to 7, 8, 9, 10 different clubs, and they can compete there, and then they can develop and become professional players. And then, if this 14-year-old gets rejected by Boca Juniors, and he goes to I'm just gonna say like a second division club around there and develops through their youth team and rises all the way up and plays in their first team and plays well. Then Boca Juniors comes, 10 years later when he's 24 and says, all right, he's good. I'm going to buy him. So, and then all of a sudden he's playing at the top level again. And that's what happens a lot of the time in there. And they just have that chance to develop. But you're not going to have that in the U.S. because we don't have 20 professional clubs all around the Chicago area. We don't have 20 professional clubs in New York or Los Angeles. It's not there, and it's not there yet, and I don't know if it ever will be at that stage, but you can't look at South America for that because it's a completely different soccer culture. But Europe is a soccer culture that we can aspire to be, we can look to be, because that is Germany, France, Spain, England, Scotland, Holland. That is a middle-class developing world-class talent. That's what we should be looking to aspire to. We should be looking at Germany. We should be looking at England. We should be looking at Spain. We should be looking at France. Why aren't we looking at how the Germans are developing their players? I mean, you go and you watch like a 4th or 5th division game in Germany, and then you come back and watch the MLS. The 4th and 5th division is so much faster. It's so much faster pace. There's so much more tactics involved in it. It's about the same skill level, but they're not, the MLS is about, I got a big guy up top, I'm going to launch it to him and he's going to beat the crap out of people. Where in Germany, it's, there's a certain thing, what you have to do. You have to think ahead. You have to play this pass. You have to get rid of it quick or you're going to get crunched by someone, and you got to move and you got to be constantly moving. And you know what? It might be really fast. It might be back and forth, but that's the 4th division. That's the 5th division. So how do you get above that? How's like the 3rd and the 2nd and the 1st division? They have to compete against those teams. So now not only are they playing you can play at a faster pace than what these 4th and 5th division guys have, but you also play with more control and have more of an understanding of the game. And that's going to completely change how you play on the international stage. That's going to completely change. And what the U.S. needs to do is it needs to scrap college soccer. It needs to find some way to go instead of from U11 to U18 to go from like U11 to U23, or have separate systems in there, because college soccer is going to kill the development of our league. And we got to and at the professional level and at the men's national team level, we have to have people who are constantly looking for flaws. We can't be at this point where we're just propping up everything from the U.S. men's national team. They don't shit gold. They don't fart fairy dust. They're a subpar national team that needs to be accurately analyzed. And I'm kind of concerned that Qatar 2022 is going to be even worse. I mean, 4 years down the line, we have some American talent, but they've not gone through a World Cup qualifier. Hardly. Pulisic is one of the only ones. 4 years from now, all of these people that Arena was using, all these people that Klinnsman had to use, they're going to be even older. So we got to look to a bunch of young kids who have zero international experience, haven't been brought up, haven't competed at an Olympics, and we're going to just throw them to the wolves. That's our plan right now. How are we going to even qualify for 2022 at this point? We sold our soul to the devil to try and qualify for this. The easiest explanation for it for a lot of American fans is, we traded we traded for this year's number 1 overall pick. We gave up, I don't know, maybe a 15th or a 16th first round pick, but then we gave up next year's and the year after and the year after and the year after. We gave up the next 4 years first round pick to get this first overall pick, and he turned out to be a bust. That's what we did. That's what we did as a national team. And now people have to go. People have to go. Gulati has to go. Arena's clearly got to go. I don't know why his press conference afterwards is, I failed. I was brought in here for one job to qualify for the World Cup, and I didn't do it. I resigned my post. I don't know why he didn't do that. At least have some dignity. Gulati's got to go as well. There's got to be a huge change in the development. I mean, we should be having every year we should have tabs on tens of thousands of players. We should be having tabs on tens of thousands of players, and we shouldn't be eliminating them until they're like 19 or 20. We should be having tens of thousands of players. You throw over $1 billion into developing leagues. You're telling me you can't have a tab on tens of thousands of players? You know, maybe they're like number 9,000 something, but you have a little tab on them. What are they good at? What do they need improvement on? Okay, we'll check back with them in a year. Have any of these improved? No. Okay, we'll check back in a year. We'll check back in a year. Okay, it's U19. Oh, only one thing's improved. They haven't really moved up at all. Okay, he's not in the picture anymore. We're gone. That's what needs to happen. And it's not going to happen. And now we can go and watch, pick a team. Pick another country. Pick another country that's going to the World Cup. Because apparently we can't do it, but a country that doesn't even have 500,000 people in it figured out how to qualify for the World Cup. Iceland's a huge story. I mean, they don't pour anywhere near the amount of money we do into developing youth soccer. They don't even have anywhere near the amount of people to bring up. They have 200-something thousand to pick 11 gems out of, to pick 16 gems, to pick 18 gems. And not only do they have that, there's a certain age that they can pick from. You have to go from 18 to 35 and find 11 gems. So of the 200-something thousand in Iceland, how many of those people are men? And how many of those people are between the ages of, we'll say, 17 and 35? I'm guessing it's less than 100,000. Pretty easy guess on that. I'm guessing it's probably less than 50,000. They still managed to pick a team that came through the second most difficult qualifications in the world. I mean, yeah, you look at a lot of the, you look at South America clearly has the toughest qualification because the best player in the world had to wait and score a hat trick on the last day to barely qualify. Brazil was the only one that was qualified before that final day. So that's the most difficult qualification. The second most difficult one is Europe. It is. You look at, some of these groups and it's like, oh, yeah, these teams that constantly finish in the quarterfinals every year have an easy group. Of course they have an easy group. You're not going to put all your quarterfinalists in the same group with the amount of the places that Europe gets. Are you insane? You're not going to have the top team, like Azerbaijan, Gibraltar, and Liechtenstein are in the same group and one of those three gets a World Cup qualifying spot. No. But they have 6 teams in there, 8 teams in there, and a lot of those people, 3rd, 4th, 5th place are good, tough challenges. England had to play Slovakia and Slovenia. Correct me if I'm wrong. One of those was one of those knocked out Italy in 2010 in the World Cup. The other one was in the US's group, and they tied England. They nearly gave us a fit. We had to climb from behind to beat them. I mean, that's who's in those groups, and Iceland managed to do it. Oh, Serbia's going in. Serbia was a team that was hit or miss, but Serbia got through. Republic of Ireland is kind of borderline on there. Wales, good Lord, Wales, a country that's all their best players decide, hey, no, I got some English family members, so I'm going to go play in England. I'm going to go play for England. I'm going to get 3 caps there instead of playing my entire career for the Welsh national team. They almost qualified for the World Cup. They made the semifinals of Euros. How is that possible? They know what the fuck they're doing. They have an understanding of it, and they're not under this impression that some high school coach from the 1990s shits gold, so we're gonna praise him and everything he does and ignore every fault he has. Good Lord, get real. All right, fun first video for the new channel. Almost 50 minutes of just ranting about doom and gloom. I got enough video for almost 4 videos on how to run faster as a soccer player. You know what? If you want to get better as a soccer player, if you want to be the next generation, or you want to just be a better athlete, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Lets me know that there's some momentum for the channel. There's some like there, and it'll help me push a little harder to get these how to run faster videos and work on some other ones. It's probably going to get a little bit colder, a little bit more damp going into October, November, December, and I'm going to be finding less and less time to be making these videos come spring. So, you know what? If there's likes, if there's subscribes, I'll be pushing for more content to be made. But that's it for me. I am the fitness trainer Joey, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Peace.